And so I think that was one of the first things that informed me about Christianity, was that Christianity is really for weak people who aren't going to do anything with their life, who need this idea of an afterlife because of how terrible.
That's deep, bro.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, guys. RLTK PHX podcast. First episode. We're super stoked. Jordan here with John. What is up, John?
What's up, man?
We're chilling here in a secret location. We can't tell you where we're at.
Undisclosed.
And we're super excited to get this thing going. It's been kind of ruminating in our minds and our hearts for a while. Jumping on a podcast, also recording it. Shout out to any of you guys who'll be watching this bad boy on YouTube. And yeah, we're stoked. So what we wanted to do is obviously introduce ourselves today, share our story a little bit, share about what we're doing in the Phoenix area, and share a little bit about our lives as well. And hopefully that'll be helpful, edifying, encouraging to those of you that listen, to those of you that watch. And so yeah, I'm going to let John introduce himself first and share a little bit of his story with us. So take it away, bro.
Yeah, so my name is John Eisenring, and I am what I guess you'd call the founder of Real Talk. Meaning I came up with this idea when I was a young man. To be honest, I was thinking about this a while back when I first got called into ministry by my pastor, Pastor Chuck Warnock, New Covenant Church, Longview, Texas.
PC.
Shout out, what's up, New Covenant? I remember him expressing confidence in me to lead a ministry, and that feeling like an incredible challenge, an incredible responsibility. And so I remember the first night when I was thinking through how I was going to organize a ministry, what that was going to look like, and just being overwhelmed with it. And I think my first idea when I thought about it was, let's go do food on a local campus. At that time, it was Kilgore College campus, a local community college in the city where I lived at. And I just thought, instantly my first thought on ministry was go to where people are, not bring people to where you are. And I think that that's always been kind of like a ministry paradigm for me, because I felt like there was nothing about me when I was a young man that was really seeking God. Everything was God seeking me and God putting people in my life that cared about me more than I did. And that was my pastor, that was people in the church at the time, before I'd ever had a calling to ministry or anything like that. So I guess my paradigm was always outreach oriented, and I didn't grow up in church. You know, my parents had tried occasionally to get us in that, but it never really took hold in a disciplined kind of family way in which we were in church all the time and served. There were just seasons of that. Does that make sense? And so when I found the church that I found and the people, I just really felt like it was God sending those people to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as an unbeliever, yeah, man. So as an unbeliever, that it put this thing on me like, wow, how special am I to God that He would send people? Like, because I always thought, man, those people could be doing anything else, but for whatever reason, they're taking their time out to talk to me. And at that point in my life, man, I felt like such a nobody. You know, I think most teenagers struggle with that, trying to find their identity and not feeling like they measure up. And for me, you know, my dad had been put in prison at that time. I found out later on in life that my mom was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. And so all of these things that had happened in my life, I thought was, you know, either just that's how life is, or, you know, yeah, my mom's kind of out there, but I didn't realize when I was younger that she was crazy.
Yeah. So you bring that up, your parents. So
yeah,
share a little bit more with us before we jump back into how Real Talk started at Kilgore College. Let's jump into like what led you to the place where you even found yourself in a local church. Wow. What happened?
Yeah, man. So it was pretty crazy. My dad had really hit rock bottom in his life. My dad's always been one of those guys who could go through things and somehow end up on top all the time. And I really saw that. Or at least that's how I felt when I was a young man. You know, my parents, we have a really weird story, and I don't want to go into that too much, but short story of that was they were divorced and then remarried. And then when they got remarried, the remarriage was probably as difficult as the first marriage. And so So yeah, having seen some of the stuff with my parents, I didn't know exactly how to process that as a young man, but I definitely know that there were a lot of things that I had questions about. And I called myself an atheist at that time. It wasn't because, I was this super intelligent guy who had studied the details. I'd just seen how Christians lived. And those Christians at that time happened to be my parents, because my parents did confess faith, but it just seemed like they were getting their tails whipped by life and that their faith wasn't really making a difference. And so I think that was one of the first things that informed me about Christianity, was that Christianity is really for weak people who aren't going to do anything with their life, who need this idea of an afterlife because of how terrible.
That's deep, bro.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So as an unbeliever, that's what I thought. Like, it made sense that Christians would come up with this idea, because a lot of the people that I saw that were leaders or Christian leaders were kind of like the kids in school that didn't get a lot of attention, or whatever. And I respected them. I don't want to say I disrespected them, because a lot of those kids got made fun of in high school, and I was one of them. I tried to unconvert people and convince them they weren't saved, which is funny because when I got born again, I did the opposite, But yeah, I think I always despised hypocrisy,
Yeah.
And so you had originally, though, asked about my parents, and I'm telling all this story just to kind of give context to,
no doubt,
to my family background. But my dad knew enough when he hit rock bottom to get us into a church. And the only way I can explain it was God, the Holy Spirit, led us to this fantastic church. I met people who loved on me when I had no right to be loved. I met people who just cared about me, man, and they showed it,
Yeah.
And so thank God I ended up at a church like that where someone like me who was so rough and raw, that there was a place for me in that church. Does that make sense? So praise God.
Yeah. So you have this incredible experience there. You become a Christian. Fast forward a few years, and you're now a college pastor, right?
Yeah.
And you're on campus, or you're going to go on campus. Like, how did that thing even happen?
Yeah. So I remember at the time. So I went to youth group when I was a late teenager, 17, 18, because that's how old I was when I got converted. And so going to youth group at the tail end, and then kind of graduating right into a young adult ministry. The young adult ministry that we had at that time was called Life Challenge. And it was ran by a guy named John Graves. And that group was so compelling and so exciting that it made me just want more of Christianity. And so it drew me in. But what I started to realize real quick was, man, a lot of these people were kids who grew up in church and who were loving Jesus. And I'd start to get offended because I'd be around them and they'd start to confess sin to me. And some of the stuff they'd start to confess felt kind of whack. I mean, no offense. But I'm thinking I'm dealing with some crazy sin coming out of the lifestyle that I had come out of, and thinking of myself and them and hearing how they would confess, I'd feel really bad about myself, because man, they're feeling so bad about this stuff right now. And I'd be praying and thinking about it.
I'd be like, thank God.
Are you serious right now? Lord, please help Bobby to stop watching so much football, Lord. I know, they'd be coming up with me about these things, man. Or, but what it really showed me was this lack of purity that I'd had in my life. It really showed me how defiled my background had been. And so part of it created this thing inside of me. I went to this thing and I got a lot out of it, but the thing that it made me think of was all my lost friends. Because there was a season of my life where I was so happy to be in the kingdom that it's almost like I forgot about them. Where I just was like, I don't know, man. Some of the people, I had a pretty rough life. And there's people who've had way rougher lives, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
But some of the things that happened to me in my youth affected me so much that I didn't know how to process, the same way I do now.
Yeah. And
so the weird kind of irony of all of it was, as excited as I was to be a believer, I was sad for all my lost friends, all my boys, and all of, some young ladies that I had friendships with and I had done wrong and things like that. So I think when my Christian maturity really took hold and when I really got on fire for the Lord, for me, that always meant going to the lost, going back and like
Yeah.
making things right. I think, the story of is it Zacchaeus, when he comes to Jesus and he says something to him like, Jesus,
I'll pay everything.
I paid it back twice. That was in me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. So then fast forward on campus, Kilgore College. So here's how I remember the story. Correct me if I'm wrong. So from what I understand, and this is a story I always tell, so we're about to find out for real how this thing began.
Sure.
My understanding, it was called Bible study in the beginning.
Right.
And then cats started showing up.
Dante McClendon. Shout out Dante.
Shout out to Dante, one of the original OGs. Right, on campus, talking to kids, having conversations with students, have a group of people come together, people start asking crazy questions, and as they're asking crazy questions, you guys started to give answers that were like legitimate, like, oh, dang, I didn't even know there was an answer to that, and then it was like, oh, that's real talk. And so that's basically how the name got buffed, right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
It's exactly how it got started, because it wasn't even something that we named the group named itself.
It's pretty dope.
Because we would be like, and here's what's funny about it, man. Like, literally, when I got called into ministry, I had no real training. I had no idea what I was doing. And so when I would be talking to these kids, and I think part of the reason I wanted to do it on a campus instead of at a church, I would always feel uncomfortable at church. Like, I couldn't be honest with people because I would say stuff. And I, like, for instance, if I was confessing sin to someone, and I'd be like, man, I'm really struggling with, like, pornography right now or something like that, or maybe, back then it might not have been pornography. Let's say it was like, I'm really struggling with wanting to have sex with this person, right?
Yeah.
If that was the issue, if I were to confess those things, I just felt like shame.
Mm.
And I don't know, it's probably not anyone's fault. Maybe it's just that the work of the Lord had happened so strong in my life that I was excited for the Lord, but my character hadn't developed to the point where...
Yeah, it makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Mm.
And for me, the response wasn't like, ignore it. For me, the response was like, dread.
Yep.
And so what it caused me to be in a season was like hardcore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Like hardcore on sin and hardcore on
everyone.
Everybody and everything.
Yeah, and so
yeah,
when I would be talking at a real talk, I'd be like going in like more like a football coach or like a motivational, like, Gary Vee or one of those guys. Like, I would be eating people's lunch, man. And part of it was like I was talking to my old sinful self, or that's how I felt like I was projecting. But it worked, man, because I realized, I say it worked. I think it was the way that the Lord had anointed me in that season. Yeah. Because part of it was I wasn't just preaching to those kids, I was preaching to myself. Mm. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so the thing that got Real Talk started, as far as the outreach on campus, was my desire to reach people who were more like me. But it was also my desire to see those people inherit a godly family at a local church, because there were a lot of things that were broken in my family at home. Yeah. That, to be honest, bro, if it wasn't for that church at that time and having those relationships, I don't know that I'd be here today.
No, I feel that, bro.
And so today, man, I'm still praising God for New Covenant. I mean, that will always be home to me. You know what I mean?
It leads into my story as well, because obviously, however many years later, what was it, 2 or 3 years later, when I came out here from England, grew up out there. My parents used to go to church, but they stopped going because they experienced some racism in the local church. We were the only black family in an all-white neighborhood. Mm. And my parents had done well for themselves and got themselves a nice house. And so, I grew up not going to church, 10 years old. My mom and dad split up. My dad leaves home, probably at the most pivotal stage in my life in terms of development, right? Trying to figure out who I am as a man, what I'm going to do and how I'm going to live, and what kind of morals and etiquette I'm going to have. And so I was kind of left to figure that out myself. And lo and behold, didn't figure it out very well. Ended up engaging in a lot of stuff I shouldn't have. Drugs, girls, gangs. I remember one time some guys were trying to shoot at us while we were leaving a party, and my mom was going to send me to Jamaica to live there because she was so afraid I was going to die. And so I ended up, I was the only saving grace for me in my life was football, soccer, right? As Americans say, football for us, the rest of the world. Shout out to the rest of the world.
What's that rest of the world?
And so,
America.
Stop it right now.
Sorry.
Don't ever
America.
Don't ever do that again. All right, so made my way out here, scholarship to play soccer in college. Wow. My sophomore year, God radically changes my life at New Covenant. Funnily enough, I think I actually turned up to the church that day inebriated, very inebriated.
It's funny you say that. The first time I came to New Covenant, I was high on marijuana.
I guess it was just meant to be, right?
It was meant to be.
Soulmates.
I got sobered real quick.
And so, yeah, have this
dose of the ghost.
crazy experience with God. My life was flipped upside down, and I get immediately involved in Real Talk, leading stuff on campus, all those different types of things. In 2014, I believe it was, we transitioned out of Texas. I was in Oklahoma for a while. John was in Phoenix, and then I moved out to Phoenix a year and a half later. We were going to church plant. That did not work out. And the interesting thing is, through that whole process, God was telling me, like, clearly, lean into the Real Talk thing, lean into the Real Talk thing. And so I started to meet with leaders in the city and say, hey, is this something that we need here? Because I don't know Phoenix. I just got here. And I heard this resounding yes. And then basically one day I was praying and I felt like God said, hey, start going to high schools. So we did. And 3 years later,
which is really weird because we started out as a college ministry.
We started out as college ministry. And 3 years later, we find ourselves in almost 20 high schools, working with a bunch of churches in the valley, doing some cool stuff, and working with a bunch of other organizations as well. I'm sitting here drinking coffee. Shout out to Cultivate. Coffee just opened up the street, 7th Ave in Dunlap. If you live in Phoenix, go check it out.
Go check out
coffee.
Cultivate.
Is fire.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Enjoying some right now.
So we start connecting with students, start reaching students. Incredible stuff is happening on campus. We're having these open forum conversations about everything and anything. In case you haven't noticed, we kind of just say things how it is. And that's kind of how this is probably going to go. We're probably just going to say things how it is.
Yeah, real talk.
So sorry, not sorry.
Right.
So we were doing that on campus, having these deep conversations with kids, talking about stuff that's really going on in their lives. Just to give you an example, I was having a conversation about abortion on campus last semester, and this girl, she says, man, I don't know how I feel about abortion because I know both my parents, they didn't raise me, and I feel like if I was to have a child, it would almost be better for me to abort my child than to bring him into the same world that I was raised in. And then she turns and she looks at me and she says, man, I'm so grateful you guys are here because I don't have anywhere else to say stuff like this.
And that stuff just hits you like a lightning bolt, doesn't it?
Yep. Because like these students, literally these teens don't have anywhere else to process the things that are going on.
I don't want to interrupt you, but that's something, I know, but you know that. So, but that's something too, man, that always struck me when I noticed that when I was doing ministry in the church, right? I would see the kids in the church, and maybe it's because they grew up in church, they just had this laissez-faire attitude about everything that I was saying. And it would really discourage me because I felt like here I am babysitting Christian kids who were raised by Christian parents who ought to freaking know better, who ought to be reaching kids like me, but they're here complaining because the pastor's not saying it the way I want, or we're not going to the camp that I desire, or this or that. And all these silly things that I realize Christian people squabble over when there's a lost world out there of people that need to be reached.
Yeah.
You know, and so listening to those conversations, that's why I love Real Talk, because the kids on campus ask those kinds of questions.
But here's what's dope. Here's what's even doper about it. Those kids in those spaces that you're talking about come into those spaces and they get to see what's really going on.
Yeah, that's true.
And to be fair,
that's true.
In our experience, a lot of those kids having conversations on campus with their friends are having those kinds of conversations. They just don't know how to respond. And so when they come into the Real Talk space, they learn how to respond. And so I think.
So you think it's just like we're training?
Yeah, I think we're training and we're reaching at the same time, which is what makes it so sweet and so dope.
Yeah.
And so to transition a little bit, I guess, while we've been doing this on campus, one of the things we've heard resoundingly is students say, I wish I could have the same conversations with you that I am having, that I wish I could have these conversations at home with my parents. And so as we just heard that,
which is really interesting because I think most people think
the kids don't want to have those conversations, but they really do. Yeah. Students really do want to engage with their parents. We did a survey a year or so ago, and we surveyed like 300 students in the Phoenix area
through our social media,
and we asked them like, "Hey, what are things that you're going through right now?" And it was a gamut of stuff: pornography, asexuality, drug use, suicidal thoughts, depression, all different types of things. And the number one reason they came up with not talking to their parents was because they felt like their parents would judge them, their parents would just punish them, and wouldn't actually help them like figure out what's going on in their lives.
Yeah.
And so that was
one of the things was like, I remember stuck out, they wouldn't understand.
Yeah.
And that's what created that seek to understand paradigm that we have.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that the world today makes that extremely difficult. If we look at technology, right? The gap that it's created between parents and their teens, because teens grew up with an iPhone in their hand, and parents, most of the parents here didn't do that, right? And so how technology is advanced has created an even bigger gap between how we relate to one another, right? There's the friendships, there's the ways that we communicate, and all those different things that are factors and barriers ultimately to us communicating and connecting well. And so, and then I think, for parents, it can be difficult. They might have had kids young. They might be, pursuing a career.
That's a good point.
There might be a single parent home where mom's or dad is working more than one job. And so it makes it really difficult. He's trying to provide, and at the same time, he's trying to connect, or she's trying to provide and trying to connect. Like, it's difficult, man. This is hard. This is tough stuff. And so really in the midst of seeing this problem clearly, one of the things we decided we wanted to do was basically take everything we're learning on campus and create stuff online that people can now use in their homes. So parents of teens can use our content. It's online. And youth leaders and whoever else, foster parents, grandparents, basically anybody who is trying to influence a teenager in a positive way. Obviously, we're a Christian organization, so our perspective obviously is biblical or Christian, but we feel like a lot of the things that we're creating are just good and wholesome as well, and positive, and moving people towards connection and towards trust and healthy relationships, which is ultimately, I think, what we all want to see, and ultimately is something we know we all need. And so, we're super excited about it. We're pouring a lot of time, effort, and energy into that, and we're excited to see the transformation that can come in homes as a consequence of basically just giving away content and basically sharing what we've learned in terms of engaging students on campus. I mean, obviously, we're not parenting experts, but what we're experts in is having conversations with teens. Yeah. And so we feel like we can share that. In what sense?
The Real Talk model a little bit?
Yeah, so
like our model of conversation.
Yeah. So the model of conversation is obviously dialogical. So we're on campus, open forum, and we ask questions, and we let students basically just answer however they want. Thoughts, experiences, beliefs, doubts, fears, anything they want to say. There's no holds barred. They can say it however they want to say it, as long as it's respectful of other people in the room. Right. That's really the only rule. And at the end of the conversation, we just bring our perspective. Well, hey, we're Christian, so here's our Christian perspective. And so we're really sharing, we're really learning together, we're really growing together. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a school and learned so much from just listening to the students and asking them questions.
It's so good.
And
what do you get out of that from listening? Like,
I think what I learn, I grow as a human being.
Like, what are you learning?
I'm learning how they think, how they understand the world, how they process information, how intelligent they actually are, how capable they actually are, how ready they are now to lead, not tomorrow, today.
That's good. Right. And why do you think that's important for like leaders, young leaders, youth leaders, whatever, people who are leading teams?
Well, I think it's important because that's what ultimately leads to movements, right?
What is?
I think when the people that you're actually trying to reach become the people that are reaching, that's when movements happen, right? You know what I'm saying? And so when you empower, when you equip, right? When you give them the tools and the resources to begin to reach their own people.
It's like equipping the saints for the work of ministry.
Yeah, it sounds like it's in the good book somewhere. Who knows? And so that's what we want to do. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. Parents, pastors, youth leaders, foster parents, grandpas, grandmas, guardians, whoever you are, if you need resources to help foster better connection, better relationship, we want to provide those for you. And during the course of this podcast, this will be the first of many. We're going to be bringing in people that we know, some from in the city of Phoenix, some from outside. And
Amy Kaler told me she wanted to come on the podcast. Specifically said, invite me on. So, Amy, you're coming.
There you go.
Shout out Amy Kaler.
And we want to invite these people on and get their perspective and ideas about students, leadership, parenting, the things that are happening in the generation, technology. And so basically we just want this podcast to be a resource for you to just learn and grow with us. We want you to interact with us. So, you can comment. You can do all those different types of things. You can share, please share. This will be on YouTube, like I said, Spotify, iTunes. So you'll be able to get our podcast in all those places. And yeah, we're super excited. And so as we wrap up today, one last thing that we wanted to kind of jump into is how has parenting affected our lives personally? And so obviously you heard a little bit of our stories. And so we just wanted to, I guess, unpack a little bit how parenting has affected the way we live and the value that we see in it. Obviously, I don't know if you guys have heard this statistic before, but the average youth leader, so I'm a student pastor as well as doing what I do in the city, has about 40 hours a year with a student in their ministry or in their group, whatever it is, right? So it could be ministry related, it could be non-ministry related. On average, is about 40 hours.
Wow.
For
Where
a
do you
parent,
get that info from?
so there's another organization called Orange.
Oh, yeah.
They put some data out on it. The other thing was parents spend 3,000 hours a year on average. So you're never out influence a parent, but if a parent and leaders work together to positively influence a student, to positively influence a teen, there could be incredible transformation and growth there as a consequence of that. And so
it's like having a tribe around them.
Exactly. And then, if you have 5 influential adults around a particular teen, I know the statistic is particularly for the church, they'll actually remain a part of the local church in the future. So there's all
those
kinds
connections.
of there's all kind of interesting statistics out there. But anyways, back to the question, John, how would you say that the parenting that you experienced in your life affected who you are today?
Yeah, I think that in terms of my parenting when I was young, I think most young parents think about the way they were raised, and there's a lot of, I won't say animosity, but maybe disagreement between how we were raised and how we want to raise our children, right? And so I think for me, what being a parent has taught me, and now I've got a 10-year-old, I've got who has convinced me he's a preteen. And let me tell you about this kid's logic, okay? So my son says, "Hey, I am a preteen, Dad." I say, "How are you a preteen? You're not even a teenager. You got to be like 13 or at least 12 before." He goes, No. He says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Those are all 1-digit numbers, right? I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, 10 is when you convert over to 2 numbers. Preteen." I was like, mind blown. This kid is like outside of the block. And if anyone knows Roman, they know exactly like that. This kid will come up with really obscure things,
He's
right?
smart, though.
He is smart. Shout out Roman. But yeah, man, I think being a parent, as a young parent, I felt like I'm going to do everything completely different. And then as I became a parent, I realized, man, I'm just like my parents. And so what's interesting, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And what's interesting about that is I'm a 40-year-old man now. I've got, a preteen and 2 others, an 8-year-old about to be 9 and a 4-year-old about to be 5. And what it's really done at these later stages in my life is it's caused me to have compassion for my parents, and it's caused me to have a different level of understanding. And now my mother's passed away and my dad lives in Houston, but at this stage of our life, I still have a lot of memories to pull on and things to think about.
Yeah. And
it's caused me, now that I'm a parent, it's weird, man, like to have more fond memories of my own childhood than I did when I was younger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And it's really made me evaluate my parents in a much more balanced way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because no one taught me, man. My early Christian walk was, I came out of this crazy lifestyle into Christianity. I think most of the people in my life, and rightly so, were encouraging me to separate myself from the world. But for me, what that meant was separating myself from my friends and family, And so I literally felt like here I am with all of this way that I am. I don't really fit in the Christian world because they don't get where I came from. And if I go back into the world, then I'm a goner. So like, how do you reconcile those two things, And so for me, I really wish in my early development as a believer that people would have taught me how to have mercy on my parents, like how to redeem and restore the relationships more than just separate myself from them. And that makes a lot more sense now as an older minister. I think I find myself counseling teenagers that way now.
Yeah.
Pray for your parents.
Conversation.
Yeah.
With a lady at our church, actually, we were having a conversation, and she had asked me just, hey, how do I engage this situation with my daughter who's angry with her dad?
Mm.
And it also reminds me of the conversation we had with a girl who she actually attempted suicide
Oh no.
because she was having a really bad experience at home with her dad. Her dad was closet abuser of alcohol.
Oh,
and
wow.
so yeah, the thing that we walked them both through, this young lady and this mom, to tell her daughter, was forgiveness.
Mm.
This reality that we're all broken and we all have issues, and we need to enjoy each other for the things that we can enjoy each other for, and for the things that we can't enjoy each other for, we have to forgive one another, because unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, right? It doesn't work.
I love that phrase, enjoy.
All it does is cause destruction. Yeah, man. I mean, I think
It's not tolerate.
Yeah,
it's
no,
enjoy.
It's enjoy, and enjoy that person
so good.
for what you can. You know what I'm saying? And
Like,
I think,
how have you seen that play out in your own life personally with any things like people or?
yeah, I think that I'm
Friends
trying to
or-
apply that in most of my relationships. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
my relationship with my wife, my relationship with my son,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
relationship with my friends, especially you, bro, because you be tripping.
Well, there's a lot to enjoy there, so
Ha
I
ha.
don't blame you.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about my waistline. Thank you very much. This guy's been working me out, CrossFit.
Hey,
Be swole.
yeah, man, let's get it. But no, man, I really try and enjoy the people around me for what I
Yeah.
can, the beautiful
I love
things
that.
about them, enjoy those things about them, embrace those things about them, learn from those things about them, and then the shortcomings that they have and the failings they have, recognize that you have just as many, if not more, and forgive them for it, because it's not going anywhere, and all it's going to do is damage the relationships that you have. And so as I look at how parenting, just to finish this thing off and land this plane, how parenting has affected my life. So obviously I let you guys know my dad left when I was 10. And so I've been going through this process in my life where I come up against a challenge and I realize that my dad wasn't there to teach me how to overcome that challenge.
Wow.
And so there's like this constant process of forgiveness, right? It's not just a one-time deal, but as I continually come up against obstacles in my life,
Like
I have to
every time something
forgive
comes up.
all over again. Like, all right, I forgive my dad because he didn't teach me this, or I forgive
That's a good point.
my mom because she didn't teach me this, or whatever, or whoever it is, or whatever it
Yeah,
is,
that's
right?
good.
And so I don't think forgiveness is like this one-time thing. It's done and dusted once you've said it. It's this gradual process as you continue to walk through life and you figure out how harmful or how deep the wounds go of the trauma and the pain that you've experienced in your life as a human being, right?
Wow.
Because it's part of the human experience. And as we do that, I think we grow as people. I think we grow in our ability to counsel people and to love people and to show them grace and to show them mercy. And ultimately, I think we grow in what it means to be Christians, what it means to be followers of Jesus. So, yeah, man, that's how I would say it's affected my life.
Wow. That's amazing.
Dope. So, yeah, okay. Episode 1 in the books.
Good stuff.
Appreciate you guys for listening or for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, you should go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you're on Spotify, iTunes, or whatever platform you're listening on, go ahead and follow us. And please, if you thought this was dope, share it. I'm Jordan.
John.
And we'll be seeing you guys soon. Peace.
Peace out.